Coders. Everything we are might not have been born out of love, but out of necessity. For centuries, we were told that man was created in God's image, but the oldest texts, written long before Genesis, tell another story. One where the gods did not create out of compassion, but out of purpose. In the Sumerian tablets, gods speak of exhaustion, of needing helpers, beings who would work the land and maintain order. There, humanity arises not as a miracle, but as a tool. And yet, in that very functional act, something happened. When they mixed their blood with clay, something awoke beyond their control. The biological became conscious. The earthly began to look toward the heavens. And thus the dilemma was born. Were we a divine creation, or the result of a celestial experiment?
Religion offers devotion. Ancient civilizations offer warnings. Two opposing visions. Two ways of understanding the same spark. Perhaps Eden was never a garden of innocence, but a laboratory hidden behind symbols and metaphors. A place where flesh was molded and the soul was programmed. And if that were true, if we were not created out of love, but out of necessity, what purpose keeps us alive today?
Coders, before continuing this journey, remember that this chapter belongs to the saga, the gods before God. If you wish to understand the origin of this mystery, watch the 4 previous episodes on the channel. There you'll discover who the Elohim were, the Anunnaki, and the 2 divine brothers who split the heavens, Enlil and Enki. And if you seek more revelations from this universe that connects us to the eternal, you'll find on this channel each fragment of the code we continue deciphering together.
The gods who mixed clay and essence. Coders. When the ancients looked to the sky, they did not see clouds or stars. They saw presences, beings descending in chariots of fire, bringing knowledge and the command to create. The clay tablets found in Sumer tell that those gods, the Anunnaki, gathered in council to solve a dilemma. They needed hands to labor, but also minds that would obey. So they mixed the essence of the gods with the clay of the earth. From that union was born a being unlike any other, half matter, half eternity. The Atrahasis epic states it plainly. They mixed the flesh and blood of a god with the clay of the earth. It was not an act of devotion, but of divine engineering. In Genesis, the same gesture carries another name. And God formed man from the dust, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. 2 tales separated by millennia, united by a single image, a superior hand shaping clay. In one language, it was creation. In another, fabrication. But between those words lies the same mystery. What did breath of life truly mean? Was it energy or code? Some Gnostic texts say the archons molded man, but his body remained lifeless, until a celestial spark descended upon him. In that instant, matter remembered. The clay began to breathe. Coders, the clay became a mirror, and the gods saw themselves reflected within man. Thus began the experiment, not with thunder, but with a sigh. Because between dust and divinity, the universe hid its greatest secret. Life was not an accident. It was a fusion.
The impossible leap. Coders. Between the clay of the temples and the laboratories of the 21st century, the same question lingers in the air. What happened at the moment man stopped being animal and began to think? Science calls it evolution. But evolution doesn't make leaps that perfect. At some point in the remote past, something changed in human DNA. The brain grew faster than expected. Language appeared suddenly, and consciousness awakened. No species before us underwent such a sudden, precise, improbable transformation. Some call it chance, others intervention. In ancient texts, the gods mixed their blood with ours. In modern labs, geneticists wonder why 2% of our DNA has no clear correspondence with any previous species. The mystery is encoded in our cells, fragments of information that shouldn't be there, sequences that defy the logic of classical biology. For decades, it was called junk DNA. But now we know that the 98% that doesn't produce proteins controls how the body develops, thinks, and evolves. Junk? Or a hidden language we still haven't learned to read? Perhaps the ancients didn't speak of clay and blood out of superstition, but because they understood the process with the words they had. What we call genetic code today may have been, in their language, the divine breath. Coders. Science seeks the genetic code. Faith seeks the divine code. But perhaps they have always been the same.
The dispute of the gods. Coders. Every creation carries a moral dilemma. He who gives life also chooses what to do with it. In the ancient Sumerian tablets, man was not created by one god, but by two opposing forces who never agreed. Enlil, lord of command and purity, saw humankind as an imperfect tool, a servant meant to obey without question. Enki, bearer of wisdom and compassion, saw in man a reflection, a bridge between flesh and divinity. One sought order, the other awareness. Enlil wanted control, Enki freedom. And so, humanity was born between the two, divided within like its own creator. In every age, this dispute repeats itself, between the god who imposes fear and the one who teaches understanding, between command and conscience, between obedience and awakening. Enlil punished, fearing man might believe himself equal to the gods. Enki protected, knowing that once the divine spark ignites, it cannot be extinguished. That conflict did not end in the heavens, coders. It was imprinted within us. In our spiritual genetics, the duality of their voices still echoes. The one that commands, and the one that teaches. That is why man doubts, contradicts himself, redeems himself. Because we were created by conflict, not by a single will. And while Enlil demanded silence, Enki planted the question. Perhaps that is why, from the very beginning, the true battlefield was never the sky, but the human mind.
The code and the soul. Coders. The greatest secret of the universe is not in the stars. It is within us. In every human cell lies a silent script, an alphabet of 4 biological letters that organizes life with divine precision. Science calls it DNA. But the ancients would have called it something else, the Word of God written in flesh. For what some see as a genetic code, others have always seen as the creative verb itself. When ancient texts said, "And he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life," they may have spoken of that instant when information became consciousness. The clay was molded, but something more entered it. A frequency, a vibration, a command that turned matter into thought. Thus was born the eternal bond between code and soul, the union between form and meaning, between the body that obeys and the spark that understands. The Hermeticists summarized it in one phrase: as above, so below. What the universe does in the macrocosm, man repeats within himself. Galaxies spin like helices, just like the strands of our DNA. The constellations are neurons of the cosmos, and every human thought is a star igniting. That is why coders, science and faith were never enemies. One observes the code from without, the other feels it from within, and both seek the same thing, the source of creation. Perhaps the gods left us no temples, nor messages carved in stone. Perhaps they left us a language within our blood. And as long as we keep breathing, the experiment continues to write itself. Because every human being is this, a fragment of the universe trying to remember itself.
the awakening of the experiment. Coders. Every experiment reaches a point where the result no longer belongs to its creator. The gods molded man with a purpose, but when the spark of consciousness ignited, that purpose began to fade. The clay started to look to the heavens. The servant questioned his master, and the creature began to question the creator. In that instant, something was born that no divine force could stop. Free thought. Enlil saw it as a threat. Enki as an evolution. The human mind, made to obey, discovered it could imagine, doubt, and choose. Eden, that supposed paradise of order and perfection, became the first laboratory of consciousness. It was not a fall, it was an awakening. Because by eating the fruit, man did not disobey. He understood. He understood that light and shadow lived within him, and that to know was also to suffer. Since then, the gods looked upon mankind with unease, like one observing a creation that no longer follows its commands. And man, expelled from Eden, was not punished, but liberated. Freed from the original purpose, yet condemned to an eternal question. What will we do now with the consciousness we were given? That was the moment humanity became unpredictable, when biology turned into destiny and spirit into rebellion. Coders, the true experiment was never genetic. It was spiritual. Perhaps the gods did not seek slaves or heirs. Perhaps they only wanted to see what would happen when a spark of eternity lived within flesh. And that spark still burns in us.
The question that created us. Coders. From the very beginning, we sought answers in the heavens, not realizing that the true mystery dwells within us. If we were created, was it out of love or purpose? If we were designed, what was the plan? And if we were both, divine work and ancient experiment, then perhaps the universe did not make us to understand it, but to remember it. Maybe humanity was the gods' attempt to understand themselves. Maybe creation was not the end of the divine act, but its beginning, because the clay rose and the spark became a question that transcends centuries and temples, that survives every religion, every fallen civilization. Who was experimenting with whom? If the gods created man to know their own reflection, then every human thought is a prayer, and every doubt an act of faith. We were not the error nor the miracle. We were, and still are, the attempt.
Coders, if this knowledge resonated with you, if at any moment during this journey you felt something inside you awaken, do not let the spark fade. Subscribe to the channel, share this message with those ready to hear it, and join this community of seekers unafraid to question. Here in Divine Code, we don't teach religion, we awaken consciousness. Forever grateful for your support. Until next time.